All right, good morning, everybody. I'm here with Base the Kid here, one of UK's finest. Um, I just had to talk about this because leading up to this Joshua Usyk 2 rematch, we kept hearing from Eddie Hearn, and not only Eddie Hearn, but a lot of UK boxing pundits, a lot of boxing fans over in the UK kept saying how Joshua wasn't getting his respect. Eddie Hearn went as far as saying that he believed Sky wanted Joshua to lose. And given what I've seen in the history of Joshua's career, to me, it always seemed like UK was strongly behind him because of all the pay per view buys, because of all the people that came to buy tickets for his fights in these stadiums. He's had record breaking numbers in pay per views, attendance, sponsorships. To me, he seems like the poster boy for what the heavyweight champion is supposed to be, right? So for me, I never understood this recent complaints and criticism from boxing fans saying that people aren't getting behind him. He's not the face of UK boxing. Because to me, even losing these three fights in his last five, to me, he still seems to be the face of UK boxing. Base, you're over there. You have a better perspective than I do. Even Showtime back in the day gave him a 6 fight deal. So I don't remember any other UK fighter at that time getting an American deal. And even Tyson Fury never had a a really long term big UK contract. He had to come to the United States to get a distribution deal. So I need it from your perspective. What's going on? Is AJ still the face of boxing? Is he being disrespected? What's going on, man?
Well, all of what you said in the start is pretty much accurate, right? So he was quote unquote the poster boy. He was like, lauded by the public. He was, the golden child, and the pay-per-view numbers and the revenue and everything supported that. Now, he's still commercially probably the most viable source of income for boxing in the UK, even after 3 losses. But basically, it was a case of the the seal started to shift, right? When So it was just after he lost to Ruiz. So all of a sudden, because as you know, in this sport, it's like you take a loss and now you're garbage until you redeem yourself. Yeah. Now in the UK, there's a very big thing about almost being too successful. Like when he was on the ascendancy, he was the poster boy, the golden child. Beat Charles Martin, golden child. Sort of beat Brazil, beat Molina, Klitschko at Wembley, golden child, loved it unified. He's on this crusade. He's this big guy. Then you've got obviously the Takam fight. Didn't look amazing, the Takam fight. Then you've got the Joseph Parker fight where a lot of people felt like the referee gave him unfair help by, not letting them do any work up close, constantly breaking them. Didn't get this knockout because obviously he was sold and portrayed as this big knockout artist. Now all of a sudden he's gone the distance. As I said, with the Takam fight, it was a very poor referee stoppage. So people saw that and said, oh, okay, that doesn't look too good. You got the Parker thing. Then after Parker, obviously you've got the whole thing now with Deontay Wilder. He's saying he wants to be undisputed. You've got Wilder running the very clever narrative on your side of the pond that, oh, he's ducking me, he doesn't want to fight. Contract after contract. No, there's always something wrong with the contract. It's this, it's that, it's rematch clauses. Oh, they don't tell him, they want to tell him what the split is, blah, blah, blah. So there's all of that. So you've got people now sort of believing the rhetoric that, oh, he's ducking the other credible guy. So you've got that dynamic there. Obviously, you get the Povetkins and all that. Then you've got Tyson Fury coming back. Now, ultimately, at this point, it's a case of you've got Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder essentially colluding to try and take AJ out of that number one spot. You say if you've got 2 and 3 fighting each other, number one becomes irrelevant because now the other best are fighting each other, or 1 and 3, 1 and 2, however you've got it structured. So they've gone through that journey. And whereas you've had that draw between those two, then you've got Wilder icing Brazil in 1 round. AJ feeling like he's got to try and do the same thing. Oh, like AJ didn't do that. It took him 7. It took Wilder 1. See, he's better. So you've got that narrative running there. Then he goes, underperforms, gets stopped by Ruiz. Oh, so now he's become quote unquote a hype job. That's what a lot of people are looking at him as. He goes back in the rematch and he wins it convincingly, but everyone's now like, oh well, this isn't the kind of victory this guy stopped you. You just decided to box him. Like, you didn't want to just avenge that properly, you didn't want to rip that away. So you've now got that narrative. Oh, AJ's changed. Like, he's being cautious. He's not being that same wrecking machine that we knew and loved, kind of thing. That's sort of where the narrative comes. On the other side of the pond now, you've got Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder now running it back with each other. Now Tyson Fury has done the unthinkable. He said he was going to walk forward on Deontay Wilder. He was going to knock him out. He's done it. So now you've got that narrative. Oh, okay. So whereas AJ was the golden child, some people's like, well, yeah, but he's not the greatest of boxers. Now you've got this guy that everyone believes is the best boxer on the planet at the heavyweight status. He's back. And, subsequently, he looks like us more than this guy does. It's one of those things where occasionally you have it almost on the sense of, okay, we like you while we don't have anything better. So for someone like me, you could say AJ is, I would aspire to be that. That's how you kind of look at it, because it's something for me to look at and achieve. Okay, he can achieve, I can achieve. And ultimately in a lot of sports, especially competitive sports, there is a lot of you might see a lot of predominantly black athletes, America, UK, wherever, that will dominate a lot of those sort of competitive, explosive type sports. So you have that, but now you've got like this white guy that's on another level to this guy, or perceived to be that way, but he looks like the majority of the crowd of the crowd. So you've got that. Then you've got the whole misinterpretation, or the chosen misinterpretation of the Black Lives Matter speech that he done, or that he read from someone else. So you've got all these other things. So now you've got people within a nation that, predominantly is of a different dominion to him, saying, oh, well, this guy's over here, he's just as good. He can be the one that he's the one that we want to see because he looks like us. It's all about identity in the end of the day. So you've got that. Then he goes through, and then obviously Fury has the trilogy fight with Wilder, gets dropped several times, but comes back, drops Wilder several times, knocks him out, ends the saga. And you've got, oh, he's the greatest of the planet. He's got the Ring Magazine belt. He's got the WBC, which most people consider to be like the greatest of the belts, so the most recognizable. So you've got all of that. Then you've got Joshua, who now has just been outpointed and comprehensively beaten up by a guy that's come up from cruiserweight, again, of different dominion. Oh, so really is, as people say, he's a hype job. He's not, this small guy's come up and beat him, and he's supposed to be the big guy, supposed to be the big bad of the division. So you have that, and then he's obviously reading all of this all the time. He's being told, you need to improve. You need to improve. You've got Fury constantly telling him, oh, you're a stiff robot. Like, he's just a bodybuilder, pumped up bodybuilder, no boxing ability. I beat him in my sleep. All of that stuff. So it's all going off in his head. So he's got all of that on him. Now he's obviously got this pressure of, okay, he's got a rematch clause. He's now got a new deal that he's working on with DAZN. The Sky thing is not his anymore. So ultimately they've picked up the pay-per-view, but after this, they've got no rights to him whatsoever. Like, he won't be on their platform. So in that sense, it's a case of, oh, well, if all of this now fails and I don't win, then essentially it almost feels like I go to the back of the line. I almost have to start from scratch. So that's where obviously he now comes out in second fight, tries to change up his team. Bit too late, does some of the same things he did in the first fight, gave a better performance overall, tried, was a bit more assertive than he was the first time, but ultimately it wasn't enough. And then the outburst comes out, because at that point he's like, the same outburst that he's given to, I wasn't supposed to be here. Like, I didn't grow up from the age of 5 through the amateur system. You know, you guys want me to throw these combos and say, oh, just be aggressive, just walk him down. Like, I can't, that's not me. I can't do that. I don't have this gas tank for that. I'm not the same as these other people. I'm a different person, but I'm winning in life. Yet every moment, everyone's got something to say. And that's kind of what his mindset is. So when Eddie Hearn saying he hasn't been backed, like, again, he's backed at the start, but a lot of people don't like you to be too successful. They want you, you know, they want you to do good, just not too good or not too much better than them. And if you are, then they, you know, they want to see your downfall and then see how you react to that. So that's just kind of an unfortunate situation with regards to him. And with regards to Sky, there were little things that I personally even saw that I'm like, oh, they're not, you know, it doesn't look like they've got AJ's best interests at heart. Like when they announced that they was going to have the, you know, the rights to the fight, for instance, on Sky Sports News, the entire segment where they had breaking news, Sky's picked up the rights, all you saw was images of Usyk punching up AJ through several different rounds on a continuous loop. You never saw one part where AJ might have had some success or landed one punch. It was literally everything that Usyk done to him. And see, some of the way that the Sky employees was talking about, oh, well, I don't really, he's got a chance, but I don't really see him doing X, Y, and Z. And maybe he should retire if he can't get it done. These little things, these aren't things that they would have said if he was still on their platform. So to a degree, Eddie Hearn is right that, you know, Sky weren't necessarily giving him the full backing. They just picked up the fight because they knew they could make some money out of it. But ultimately, he's not there. He's not theirs anymore. He's not their investment. And while they, you know, they're not going to openly like sabotage him. Like I said, there was imagery where I saw. I'm like, oh, that's a bit weird, because I know that if he was, you know, you've never shown that before in any of his other fights. You didn't show him getting beat up by Ruiz when you had the rematch coming up. You know what I mean? So these little things there are things that I saw.
Okay. A couple things I got to ask you, because I've even heard some people kind of bring race into this. And in the United States, we have a lot of race problems here. It's well documented. Even in boxing, there's a racial divide. Is there that same racial divide in the UK? Because I don't see it publicized as much, but obviously I'm not from the UK. Is there a racial component, or need I say racial divide over there in the sport of boxing? Are there people that are for AJ because they, like you said, obviously, you know, you can resonate with AJ, right? And other people could, like, who maybe resonate more with Tyson Fury. Is there that divide over there?
Right. It's not as it's definitely not as over or as pronounced as it is in the US. Not by a long shot. For the most part, people kind of will get behind you because they most of the time it's marketing over here is done a lot better. So it's not about like race as such, but it is still there. As I said, there are there's been situations, for instance, the Black Lives Matter thing that took place, right? There was a whole group of people that felt like, oh, AJ's now almost turned his back on them with this speech, even though the speech wasn't what they're thinking it is, but they've heard it, it's triggered them, and they're like, oh, well, he's not talking to us in this, so he's not including us in this debate. You've got that. Plus, recently, I don't know if you've heard a lot, but Tyson Fury's spoken a lot about immigrants, or people coming over, and you know, they don't even look after the people in their own town, but they let a lot of immigrants come in and even use words like, oh, you know, to come and blow us up. He said that in in one of his Snapchats or whatever, and he's talking a lot of, oh, now I'm gonna have to go and deal with this foreigner, this guy, because AJ is gonna, you know, he's gonna give the belts back to Ukraine, so I'm gonna have to come in and deal with this foreigner again. So a lot of the time, it's not necessarily covertly, like, or overtly, I should say, racial in terms of black people, white people, but it can be a lot of like nationalistic. But then there will be some tones of race in there as well for some people. Like I said, it depends. When it comes to the heavyweight division, it's one of those things where, again, same as in America, you know, when they was talking about like they was always looking for that great white hope, and then they had the film about it and all that stuff. So they're like, okay, well, the black guy's here, well, he's just the best guy. So when you had the white guys like, you know, the Morrisons and whatnot, all of a sudden, oh, they might be the one, because that's who the majority of people, you know, they want someone that looks like them. Very similar. We are like that to a degree, not as much, because again, while AJ was cookie cutter and non-controversial, didn't say anything bad, they like black people like that over here. So someone like Frank Bruno, lauded, loved, because he was almost like the court jester to them. They are non-harmful, like, you know, no harm, won't do us anything. Funny little guy. We can make a bit of fun out of him. He's lovely. Same with someone like Chris Eubank Sr. He was hated while he was initially, but when he sort of, you know, became the big monarch with the monocle and everything, oh, he's a you know, the nation's darling, because now he just seems non-threatening to everyone. And so it's like that. If you've got over here, if you've got sort of the black guy that's just by the numbers, you know, very professional, keeping it corporate, you know, being very, they like that. When you sort of deviate away from that, now they want to find either the next that, or they want to find someone that looks like them. And that's essentially how it's played out at this point.
Yeah, to me, I've always got the sense that over here in America, we tend to root for the bad guy more, while over there in the UK, you guys root for the good guy more. Am I accurate in that assessment, or is that true?
Yeah, no, that's true. They root for the good guy. As long as the good guy is on that whole stay humble, jovial, jokey, you know, they don't really. But again, the good guy over here usually isn't the most successful guy. He's just the nicest one.
Yeah.
And that's what they kind of like. Someone who, he's going to give us his all, he's going to try. He may not always get there, but he's always going to be there for us, kind of thing, which is why someone like Lennox Lewis wasn't really as beloved until after he retired, kind of thing, because he wasn't that typical, stereotypical guy, but he was just the best one. There was nothing you could really say.
Because I remember coming up when I used to watch Frank Bruno. Frank Bruno obviously came over here, fought Tim Witherspoon, fought Mike Tyson a few times, spending some big fights over here. But even when he kept losing, because he had such a great personality, he was just a very likable person, and he always was in shape, lived the life of a fighter. No matter how many times he lost, the UK fans never you know, stop supporting him. They were always behind him. Same thing with Ricky Hatton. Ricky Hatton had his problems, but he was a nice, likable guy. He was more of a person where people were like, he's just a regular guy like us. So they kind of resonated with him. And even when he lost, they stayed behind him. In the United States, once you start losing, you know how we are over here. Where I've always said this, and I got in trouble for saying this many times, that I think the UK boxing fans are the best boxing fans in the world, because they really get behind their fighters. They always buy the pay-per-views. They travel and go to these events and pay money and purchase tickets for these events, where we're the guys that always stream everything, and we constantly trash our fighters when they lose. And I can respect the fact that you guys stand behind your fighters. But because AJ was thought to be this squeaky clean, perfect guy, and no one can be that 24/7. But I get the sense that AJ is a genuinely nice person. He's a good guy. I mean, he's the type of guy where, you know, you'd like to hang around with. He'd be a good friend. I mean, whether that means anything or not, I get the sense that even with, you know, the fact that nobody is perfect, right? He seems like a nice guy, right?
Yeah.
To me, Tyson Fury would be very hard to market because of all of the controversial things he says, his controversial stances. And then you can say, well, you know, he's just trying to play the bad guy. He's just trying to, you know, heal it up or whatever. But there's a pattern. And I heard those statements about the immigration. I heard those statements about calling Usyk a foreigner. It sounded very xenophobic to me. And, you know, but people over at Talk Sport, they were laughing it off. Everyone was laughing it off. So it's almost like Tyson Fury, because he is who he is, people like, oh, well, he just says what's on his mind. He's not afraid to speak the truth. And AJ's been propped up as this perfect guy. So if AJ says anything slightly controversial or something that maybe someone doesn't agree with or could rub someone the wrong way, because I do think the Black Lives Matter speech, a lot of those comments were taken out of context. But what about that Eddie Chambers message that you hear about, that Eddie Chambers message that he sent Eddie Chambers? They were trying to say that his account got hacked and that wasn't him. What are your thoughts on that, and how was that taken by the public with the DM for Eddie Chambers saying that you're a disgrace to the superior race or something like that? I don't know whether or not that was actually him sending that stuff, that message, or if his account was hacked. But what are your thoughts on
to
that?
be honest, yeah, I mean, look, with regards to that, no one 100% knows, but it was one of those things. It kind of got brushed under the rug. Like, obviously we all saw it, but he said the account was hacked. There's no way to prove otherwise, because it wasn't a voice note, it was a message, and we know that accounts get hacked all the time. And ultimately at that time, because he was the media darling and he had a lot of money behind him and marketing, it was just, no one spoke about it, no reporters spoke about it, no one asked him about it. Sky didn't bring it up, BT didn't bring it up, no other sports channels, BBC didn't. So it just wasn't something that was spoken about. So it got put out, people saw it, and then within a few days it was just like it was in thin air. That's kind of how it was. So yeah, with regards to that, I don't know. That didn't diminish any part of his stock at that time, especially as he was still undefeated and he was making a lot of money within the infrastructure of boxing and within just the UK market as a whole.
But a lot of people did take offense to the Black Lives Matter speech, correct? I mean, that seemed to have got a lot of attention. A lot of people have criticized AJ for that. Do you think that kind of tarnished him a little bit and kind of put him in a negative light for a bit? And
I mean, it definitely did, purely because, as you said, you thought it was taken out of context. I know it was taken out of context because I listened to the words, but ultimately, when you're on the outside, I guess, looking in, and you just hear someone saying, well, don't spend money in their shops, and I guess systematically that the majority of owners of these shops are like Caucasian people, you thinking, oh, so now you're telling black people not to spend money with white people, or white, that's kind of out of order. Whereas ultimately he's talking about corporations. He's like you said, like, you've got your one of your black friends or whatever, they're trying to start up their own business, entrepreneurial. Every other dominion and nationality, creed, whatever, puts money back into their community. They, the Chinese, the Asians will put money back into their community. They'll buy from Asian stores. They'll get all their groceries from there. Same thing with the other, like the Indians or whatnot, they all have their big stores, their big economies. Like, everyone puts money back in. The Jewish do it, the Turkish do it. So it's like, well, we should do it as well. If you want to have a say at the table, you've got to do that economically. The way to do that is to try and keep some money in-house rather than spending it with these big, massive corporations that ultimately aren't doing anything for you, don't care about you, constantly marketing their stuff racially to get reactions and being racially insensitive, but you still put money back into them. You've got a friend that's got a clothing company, put money in there, build up the like I said, the black supermarkets, like, put money into your community to grow it and have a say. So not everything is now going to be dictated by other people that aren't having your interest at heart. That's what he was saying. But people, again, no one really bothered to listen to the nuance. They just decided to read the text, and the text to them didn't sit right.
Yeah, and it's unfair because, like you said, we have areas here where places called Chinatown, Little Italy. We have in Chelsea. There's like a strip of just Hispanic stores, Spanish stores or whatever, and there's no problem with that. But every time black people want to have their own types of areas and they want to bring businesses up in their community, there's always this criticism, and I see the inconsistencies there, and I think it's unfair. But there could be an argument brought up against AJ. Well, okay, you're saying to support black businesses, but a lot of your sponsorships, they're all from white-owned companies. So do you think that could have been thrown in his face a little bit? And you think that's where some people kind of took umbrage with him about?
Yeah, that was definitely a part of it because yeah, there's no company that he, Google, Under Armour, Lucozade, like none of those are black owned. But I guess you might then say there's twofold because number one, his whole response is, well, ultimately I didn't write the speech. The person who wrote the speech isn't here. I'm just brave enough to speak on their behalf. I'm speaking their words, and obviously he's putting his name to it because ultimately if you put if him as a big platform puts his name to something, then that means that it's going to get further than just a random other person speaking. So in that sense, I guess he's trying to do it from that point. And ultimately, I guess you could also say, well, yeah, all of his are sort of white owned companies, but he's started his own management company where he's not just employing, like, he's got white people on staff, he's got black people on staff, but it's a black owned company. So by getting that message out and having more people do that, it's not just about only hiring black people or whatever, but if you own this and you invest within the community that you come from, it can change. And then now maybe he can get sponsorship from black owned companies that aren't Lucozade, Under Armour, whatever. So yeah, I agree that there is a bit of a hypocrisy saying, well, support X, Y, and Z, but sponsorships isn't the same necessarily as, I guess, the average pound day to day. Because I'm sure I've seen him, go to certain areas and buy things that he could have got elsewhere, but it's just because he wanted to go there for it on that occasion. So it swings and roundabouts. It's never going to be perfect. There's always going to be hypocrisy in something that everyone says, but there's, if the intent is right, sometimes you can overlook the hypocrisy.
Yeah, if I'm going to be fair, I have no problem with him taking the sponsorships because he's trying to build up his wealth. Who's to say he's not, like as you said, he can take that wealth and turn it into making his own businesses and his own endeavors. And when you do see his entourage, the majority of people around him are black, right? So it's not like he doesn't help out the black community. I at least I don't know all the ins and outs, but it seems like he does. I mean, he seems like he's pretty consistent, and I don't have a problem. See, I really thought that was really unfair to him the way he was criticized for that speech. I think it really was taken out of context. The big problem I had, though, and the whole Sky thing, did Sky have a bias against AJ, or did they? I mean, in fairness, you're not supposed to take a side. Even if you're a commentator, you can say who you think's going to win. But I got the sense that Sky just didn't think AJ was going to win the fight. So I don't think it was like, it's hard to say it was a personal slight against AJ, but you can make the argument that if AJ was still under contract with them, they would have probably not been as openly critical of him. But in my opinion, I just think a lot of people didn't think he was going to win. That's the thing.
I agree. With regards to that, but again, as you said, sometimes when you're around someone or when you're invested in someone, even sometimes as friends, yeah, you got for instance, I'm on Undefeated podcast. I'm a member of that team. They openly said, we are biased towards AJ in this fight. Like anything we think we can give him, we're gonna give him. So they, and they was openly like, Usyk's gonna get smoked. He's not gonna have a chance. That was their mindset because they was loyal and backing AJ. If they didn't have any interest in how it's gone either way, they all would have been honest and said, boy, this is gonna be a hard task. We don't know if he's gonna do it. And same with Sky. If Sky still had a vested interest in AJ, those people that said, yeah, I just think Usyk's going to be too good for him, maybe they wouldn't have said it, or they would have diverted the way they said it. Like, look, AJ's always got a chance, and we really do think he is capable of winning. They might not say he's going to, but they'll say he's definitely capable, and we do believe that, he's got the best chance to do so with his new team. They're going to spin it a different way. So, yeah, sometimes there is a sense of freedom that comes with not being fully invested in someone, or not liking, in some cases, not liking someone, because you can be a very critical and honest when you don't like somebody.
I just think they were being honest. And to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, Adam Smith seems to be probably one of the most unbiased people I've ever seen in the sport of boxing. Like he he goes to fights. I think he loves the UK fighters, and I think sometimes he could be biased towards the UK fighters. You know, when comparing them to American fighters, possibly there's a bias there, but I think he loves all of the UK fighters. Do you sense there's a bias against, like, he's biased towards certain UK fighters over others? Because he'll travel the globe to cover these fights, even if Sky is not the broadcaster. Like, he was there for Amanda Serrano versus Katie Taylor, and he had nothing to do with that fight. You know, he traveled. I think he traveled to what was that? When AJ was, I guess they did have something to do with AJ Ruiz, because the UK pay-per-view was on Sky. But we've seen him, like, really promote other fights that really have nothing to do with Sky. So is he biased towards certain UK fighters over others, or am I wrong here? Because he seems to be kind of equally.
Adam Smith wasn't at Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, because if you remember. No, because there was an event that he was doing with Top Rank on that day. So he stayed in the UK. He's like, well, we got to cover this. So they remember. Now, one of the things that Eddie Hearn said was that he was upset that, or he was not happy that Sky weren't talking about this big woman's fight. Adam Smith would talk about it in interviews on internet channels, but there was no mention of it on Sky or on their programming. So he's biased towards his roster, essentially. He'll reference and talk about other people when it's away from the Sky platform, but it's always about who he's promoting or who he's dealing with, and that has always been that way. He spoke a lot more glowingly about AJ when he kept saying, oh, well, yeah, I'm fairly confident he's going to re-sign with Sky. He's a loyal guy. His loyalty, rare. As soon as AJ is going to sign with the Zone, he didn't say, oh, well, AJ's going to lose, but, the glowing references weren't as glowing as they were previously. It was, so when they're with Sky, he's with them 24/7 kind of thing. When they're not, it's not as invested, which is natural. But he's not as unbiased as you might think. I don't believe so.
Or as he presents. Didn't he go to the Tyson Fury Dillian White fight though?
I think he had a ticket to go there. I think he did, but there was nothing else on that day. So
yeah, because he was there, and that he had nothing to do with that fight. I don't know. I just see him talking about a lot of fights. And maybe he only does it on the YouTube interviews, and that's fine. But in fairness, I mean, he has no incentive to big up other. I think all promoters and all broadcasters and people who are in charge of networks kind of would be biased towards people they're affiliated with. That's fine. But do you think that there is a tension between him and Eddie Hearn now? And do you think that there is a resentment that AJ left over there? And do you think that he's going out of his way? I mean, like he says he loves AJ. AJ's still his friend. You think he's being genuine when he says that, or do you think he's just trying to be politically correct in those statements? Do you think there is some type of resentment?
No, I definitely think there's a bit of resentment because AJ is the cash cow. Even at this point, you could still bank on AJ to do 500,000 pay-per-view buys against pretty much anybody. 450, 500 as a minimum. He's never done less than that on pay-per-view. So, when you've got it you're looking at your budget, they used to have 4 to 5 like pay-per-view slots in there, and AJ always had 2 of them. It was a banker. And they knew, okay, well, roughly we can generate this amount of money. So it's probably like a professional resentment that he's no longer there. It may not be personal in the sense that he's wishing bad luck on AJ, but yeah, he's definitely not happy that AJ didn't resign, because no one would. Commercially, he's still the cash cow of the UK. There's no one that generates more money than him. Nobody.
And then you got to look at it from his perspective. Since AJ has been with Sky, every event's been successful. So maybe he's saying to himself, we've always pushed the Sky. We've always been successful in all the events we've done with AJ. We have a much more consistent track record compared to DAZN. I'm going to be honest. I thought it was a stupid move to go to DAZN. So obviously, I could see where subconsciously there's got to be some type of like, this doesn't make sense. It has to bother him a little bit. I mean, I think anyone in his position, if you're human, it would bother you because you're saying to yourself, I did everything right. Did Sky do anything wrong in the handling of AJ since AJ's been with them? In any event Sky was involved with AJ, have they made any mistakes? I would say no. I'm not a professional. I'm not a business expert, but to me, it looked like they did everything right by AJ. So was it right, you think, for AJ to leave Sky? Did it make sense to go to
the thing is, I feel like when you say obviously did they do anything wrong, like no, ultimately I think the issue might be sometimes when you're listening to Sky's lead up programming and some of the language they use, you can hear that there's always like an agenda behind what they're saying. There's a narrative that they're pushing. They're always looking, and Adam Smith's openly said this on several interviews recently. They're always kind of looking for the story behind the person to push as well, as opposed to just pushing the person. So sometimes you get that, and there could have been an idea that maybe that wasn't what AJ wanted. To me, in his terms and his legacy, maybe it doesn't make sense to leave because he's only got a few years left, 3, 4, 5 years at the max kind of thing. But when we all consider that everything is moving to digital and online platforms and streaming services and streaming apps, it makes logical sense to be one of the first people on that train. And as we remember, like, he wasn't a shareholder at Sky. He was an employee that got paid money. Now he's got shares. He's on the advisory board for DAZN. So he's going to get money with DAZN outside of when he's fighting and when he retires. He'll always have that sort of revenue stream, which he didn't have with Sky. So you've got that. Plus, as you said, when you bring him over there, there's going to be other people there will be people that migrate, whether it's other boxers or whether it's the public. So he's probably got some kind of back end off of that as well as an additional revenue. So you get a chance to be a consultant and, an advisor and have a potential revenue stream there for the rest of your life. Plus the money that they're paying you per fight, because as we were told, he's got $100 million a year contract with them. So for
really?
2
Is that
fights,
what it is? That's what
it was reported as. So when you look at that, they pay him more than what he's getting at Sky. He's got a say on the board. He knows that this is the future, so he can bring the rest of his 258 and the AJ boxing management and all that stuff like later on down the line. They can all go through there. That's more revenue streams and more stuff that he's going to build up. So in terms of a long-term process, it made sense. In terms of the here and now, you might say, well, no, Sky's still the most visible. They've clearly got a much bigger platform than DAZN. They got much more people. They've got about 8 different channels that they can plug your content on. But ultimately for AJ, that only works for him twice a year or however many times he's going to fight. Whereas on the DAZN thing now, as I said, he has more control, and supposedly, I guess he's getting paid throughout the year as well as when he's fighting. So yeah, I can see why he would have left. He left, I guess, for the same reason Eddie did. It might be harder in terms of the overall view, but you get more control over your product, you get more dates, and they gave you a bigger budget than what Sky had. And you don't have to justify all the pay-per-views you were putting on before. Whereas now you're only going to put on pay-per-views for the ones that you know you're going to cream a lot of money off of. So...
And Eddie has an advisory role over there too as well. So as you said, I think they both have more control. I guess my only problem with DAZN is the instability of the future. We've seen them restructure Canelo's deal, and ultimately that deal was taken off the table because they couldn't deliver on it. They restructured Gennady Golovkin's deal. They seem to be losing money every year. So you have to ask yourself, what's the guy's name? Bolotnik. How often is he going to continue to just dump money into this project and continue to lose money year after year? So that's my concern. Do you
with regards to that, let me just so with the thing is, with the whole DAZN losing money thing, what people, they see it, they're losing money, but every one of these starting streaming apps and stuff loses money initially. They're not losing money because of the box. Yeah, like obviously they're not making money on every show they do for boxing, fine, but they're not losing money because of the boxing. They're losing money. He's losing, or he's making losses because he's trying to buy up licenses. So he's spending out huge amounts of money on licenses for different territories, for different sports every year. So when he was looking to do the BT deal, and that was supposed to be a couple of billion, that would have looked as a loss on the booking sheet. But ultimately, that's a long-term investment. So all the losses they're making, it's not like, oh, boxing is just draining them year after year. It's like they're buying up revenue, they're buying up stream. Matchroom made huge profits over the last year just
Matchroom
off
was
of their shows.
Matchroom was making money hand over fist because
Yeah,
they're getting paid by the zone.
but they have to they're getting their budgets. Obviously, they're getting their overall budget, but they can't just put that straight into their street. So they have to still do it via their, whether all their events, whether it's the boxing, whether it's the darts and everything else the Matchroom does. So they're still making money. So the zone incrementally, they're losing all this money now for the long-term goal of getting the huge subscriptions. So as soon as they get in over here, for instance, any type of football they can get, that's gonna triple or quadruple their subscription base, and that will be a new revenue stream that they can bank on. So they're always going to be in the red for the foreseeable future, but the long-term strategy is what they're looking at. So yes, they're losing money, but I don't want it to look like, oh, they're boxing, they're failing. It's not that, because they're in 170 territories around the world. You wouldn't be in those territories if every single one of them was making you a loss. You see what I'm saying? So the streams that they must be steadying out at some point. It's just US is a new market, UK is a new market. So clearly they're gonna always look a bit worse at this stage.
So you think they're going to be able to turn it around down in years to come? Are you optimistic that they can turn it around? You think so?
I do think, because I mean most of them have, or they all look at this as a loss. Like Netflix, obviously they're going through a bit of a bad patch now, but they went through the same thing. They was in the red for years and years and years, and all of a sudden they was in the black, turning over mad profit. Now they've obviously lost some of their old licenses, so they've had to, they've lost quite a few subscribers because of that. But that's the zone, obviously have got that as the blueprint. They've seen what's going to happen there, so they're like, okay, well, let's shore up and make sure that doesn't happen to us down the line. So you just got to make sure the contracts are solid for whatever period of time you need them to be. But I do think that overall they will get there in the end, but they're not the finished article now. Definitely not.
Yeah, because a lot of people over here, because I just got a message when I went on my Google Play to looking at my subscriptions, and it says March 23rd of 2023, my DAZN subscription cost is going to go up $50. I don't know if yours is going to go up next year too. Is yours going up when you renew? I don't know.
We only get pay it monthly. We don't have the option for the yearly yet over here.
Okay, so mine over here, it's going to go up $50. Now they have the pay-per-views over here. The KSI fight, I guess they put that on pay-per-view for $10 over here if you wanted to watch it. But all the fights ended up being on YouTube like hours later anyway, so it was kind of counterproductive. But I'm hearing a lot of people over here saying they've canceled and they're only buying fights like pay-per-views, like Canelo pay-per-views and specific fights that they deem worthy of watching. A lot of people have canceled over here. Has there been any backlash over there in regards to DAZN because of, like, for instance, I think it's ridiculous that you guys have to pay for Golovkin Canelo 3 because that's going to be on at 4 or 5 in the morning, and they're going to charge you pay-per-view for that. Is there a lot of backlash over there for the product that people are paying for, and now the addition of pay-per-view now added to this?
There's been a huge amount of backlash with regards to the Golovkin thing. I mean, I spoke about it on my channel several times. Ultimately, I'm going to pay for it because I want to watch the fight. But we were told initially that we was getting that for free, and then all of a sudden now we're paying. We don't even know what the prices we're paying yet. It hasn't come out. I guess they was waiting for the KSI thing to finish, and we'll probably get that ramp up next week. So we'll find out with regards to that. So yeah, people weren't happy about that. Initially, when the price went up from $199 to $799, People weren't happy with that, but not because of just the price increase. It was because they increased it before even telling us what we were supposed to be getting. So we didn't even have the schedule at that point. And I guess the same thing with you over there. It's like they're telling you they're going to increase it by whatever. I know that they put out the email saying, oh, well, we've added this onto there and that onto there, whatever. But ultimately, even with that, it's like you still don't know 100% what I'm getting at this point for this increase because the schedule's not out. If I saw that the entire schedule for the year, obviously you could say subject to change, but I know the schedule, then seeing an increase, all right, you know what? Well, that's a great card. That's a great card. That's a great card. All right, you know what? Fine, cool. When you don't have that, all of a sudden now you're like, well, hold on, you're taking my money, but I don't know what I'm getting in return. And over the last 3 months, the zone hasn't been as plentiful as it has been previously. Like there hasn't been as many cards. And now 2 of those cards subsequently are pay-per-view. So it doesn't look great. There is backlash to that. Clearly there's going to be a price increase to us as well at some point. I don't know when. It might be a similar time to you guys. So that is something people are pushing back on. I have seen some people say, no, I'm canceling. I'm only just going to spend the $7.99 when I see a card that I like, and then I'll watch that month and then I'm out again. But with us, it's different because we can do that anyway because we're only contracted monthly. We don't have the option for the yearly. So it's not like, oh, I can cancel my subscription and get my money back. So, okay, you know, I'll pay this month. I'll make sure that it can't come out of my account next month. So they'll close it off. They'll stop trying. And, that. So we still have that sort of freedom in that sense. But, the backlash is there. But ultimately, I feel like the people that want to watch and want to, everyone's always got a reason to want to be angry and upset and protest something. There's like the zone haven't helped in not giving them that reason, but there was always going to be people that want to see it fail anyway, even though subsequently it probably works out better if you've got a dedicated platform for you as a boxing fan that is almost purely boxing related for you just to go on and soak up as much content as you want. The only one thing I don't like about the zone that I wish that they change is you see when they put their cards on, right? You got the live event. You can normally watch that live event or the replay of it for like 3 days or 3-4 days after. Then all of a sudden, the whole event as a whole like disappears, and you might get some of the fights that you can search for again, but you can't watch that entire event again. I want to see that whole. I want to see the whole event. If I've paid for this content, why you don't need to take off the event? Just leave it on there.
Do they do that for us too? Or maybe I just don't notice it. So
they probably do. Check back to one of the events that you liked before and see if the whole event is still there.
Okay.
Not just a couple fights.
I have to take a look at that because maybe the whole Joshua Usyk 1 card is gone, but I know the fight itself is still there. Yeah. So you could always go back.
Be there. I bet the card isn't.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and see. You may be right there. I'll have to take a look at that. So what are your thoughts on a lot of these matchroom fighters leaving Eddie Hearn and going to Sky? You think that's being overblown? You think it's a significant amount, or what are your thoughts on that?
A bit of both. So, yes, I feel like it is being overblown to a degree, but the fact there's a lot of them, it creates a bad optic. Like, oh, you're failing, or you're failing, you're stable because everyone's now leaving to Sky. But ultimately, if we look at the people that have gone to Sky, a lot of them are the older guys, right? There's very few young people within his stable that's gone. You've got people like Liam Smith, who's 32, 33 now. You've got Chris Billum Smith, he went there on a 1-fight deal, so he hasn't gone totally, but he was on a fight-by-fight with Matchroom anyway. And you've got people that you had like what's his name, Kell Brook, and all those people and Reactpor, but they're all like 30 pluses. Whereas there's not really any like the younger kids that have kind of gone. So they're looking at it like, well, I need as much eyes on me now as possible. I don't have time to wait for the project of the zone 3, 4, 5 years down the line. I'm not going to be here. I need the maximum amount of people that can see me now and try and make as much money as I can now. And because obviously Sky are having to rebuild their platform and they're stable, they are paying above market price for a lot of people and a lot of things. So, okay, I'm going to go over there. I'm going to take that money because, if I don't take it now, I'm not gonna get it. Like DAZN and Matchroom aren't paying me over the odds. They might have done before, but they're not now because sustainably within their ecosystem, they don't feel that that's right. Whereas they're going to pay me that money and they've got a huge built-in fan base. Cool, I'm gone. So yeah, when you look at it in terms of that, it's like it's only really like the people coming towards the end of their career that are kind of leaving. So it's not terrible, but yes, because there is so many of them at one time, it just looks bad.
So let's talk about Joshua's future. Do you think he is going to come back in December? And do you think he will fight 4 times next year? Or you think Eddie Hearn is just being overly optimistic? Do you think it's smart to bring AJ back so quickly in December?
Personally, I think he should come back in December. Um, the best thing about this now is you can come back. You're gonna have whatever scrutiny on you, but from you don't have any belts, there's absolutely no reason that anyone should now say, "Oh, well, that person's beneath. You shouldn't be fighting this person, that person." Because if it's good for everyone else, why shouldn't it be good for him? You know, Joe Joyce does it, Daniel Dubois does it, you know, Deontay Wilder does it, Tyson Fury does it. Everyone supposedly at the top of the game has had loads of either gimmies or tune-ups or fun fights to have, whereas he's just been in difficult fight after difficult fight. Regardless of whether you want to say all of those people were coming towards the end of their careers, they were all still Olympians, like European champions, world champions. They were all still had huge pedigree. You know, he as you said, there's no Tom Schwarzes in there. There's no Pianettas. There's no Sefa Seferis. You know, there's no Gerard Washingtons. And, you know, so within that, come back, have some fights with your new team, learn, you know, sort of learn with them, improve, hone your skills, hone your craft. You can, you know, you're 32, 33, coming up in October. You've got a good 4 or 5 years. Have one year, 1.5, 18 months where you literally you're just improving, you're working on things, staying active, staying busy. Then you can go back to the top of the division, because Fury likely probably won't be there that time. Wilder probably won't be there. You'll get some of the younger guys. By that time, you should be 2 seasons for the younger guys. And then the ones sort of in between, you can definitely get back in the mix. I would like to see him back earlier. But with regards to Eddie saying he wants him to fight 4 times between now and the end of 2023, it's sensible, because if you think one fight in December, then you can maybe have a fight in April, like end of March, early April, then have one July, maybe August, then have another one December. It is possible to have 4 fights. You just got to be realistic and know it just can't be no big stadium thing. You've got to understand the money isn't going to be the same for it. If you value the activity over the money is going to come. So I feel that's probably the best way to do it. I feel he can do it. I don't know if he will, because maybe AJ doesn't want to be in camps back to back for the next year. But I definitely do think he will be back around December this year for something. And then I reckon he'll at least have 2 next year. But I would like to see him have 3.
Do you think Robert Garcia is going to remain as the trainer? Because he made some comments saying that he believed that Anthony Joshua lost because he was mentally weaker than Alexander Usyk in the last 3 rounds. Do you think AJ is going to take umbrage with that? Do you think he's going to have a problem with those comments? Do you think there's going to be some type of I don't know, a little bit of friction between the two because of those comments? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, here's the thing. If he does have a problem with those comments, then that's part of the reason why he lost, because those comments aren't incorrect. Usyk mentally was stronger than him in those last 3 rounds. He pushed through that 9th round issue and he dominated the 10th, and then he carried on and he worked hard, kept going for the 11th and the 12th. Whereas AJ kind of stagnated a bit. It took him a lot longer to sort of get back in check. The head movement stopped. Everything just sort of kind of capitulated. So Robert Garcia saying that is not being wrong, and it's not disrespectful. He's not saying, "Oh, AJ quitting there." He's just saying, "Look, Usyk was just mentally stronger." So with that, you've got to be able to check your ego and hear the sound words within the message. The message to me wasn't even delivered wrong. So if AJ takes umbrage with that, then that's part of the problem as to why he may not get to where his talent and his potential skill levels and everything can take him, and his natural gifts. Because we all know that AJ has got a lot of yes men around him. A lot of the time, when you are that cash cow, you got so much money, that money trickles through to everyone. There's not a lot of people that want to be the one that upsets that gravy train. So if it means that one time you might have to keep quiet as opposed to saying what you really feel because you need to protect your salary or your income for your family, some people will do that. Garcia, he was brought in on this one that maybe he feels like, you know what, I'm going to say this, and this is my test to him. If he now gets rid of me, well, I've got my own stable. I've got a world champion with me right now in Bam Rodriguez. Like, so I'm okay. Like, you know, I've got money coming in, but if he listens to me and listens to what I'm actually saying, takes it on board and is willing to check himself and his ego, then that's only going to be better for him, because that's going to improve his mindset. He's going to be willing to take in this new information. He's going to be able to channel that dark place he has to go into a lot better. He's going to be able to push through certain situations harder than he did before, because now he understands that the process, it has to be hard. It has to be difficult. You know, from what I heard, there was potential things where he was complaining about certain things in the gym was too hard. It's like, well, no, like, okay, I can understand maybe from a sense of if he's trying to train a heavyweight like a lightweight, then that doesn't really work because body dynamics, whatever. But if he's pushing you in the gym and saying, look, I'm pushing you because you're going to get to the point in that fight where you're going to need the extra gear, the extra wind. Like, where's it going to come from? You need to do it now. AJ said he left it all in the gym because if he had left it all in the ring, he would have won. But leaving it all in the gym tells me he didn't work hard enough in there. Or he pushed back too much on what was being said, because you go through those trials and tribulations, you taper that down within like the week, and then hopefully by that time you should be primed and ready to know, oh, I know what this feeling feel. I felt this in the gym the other day. I can get through this now. I've been here. I know what this is. Whereas before, if he's on the tip of, all right, yeah, that's enough for today, guys, and okay, cool, good session, and he's like, well, maybe it wasn't good, because a lot of people say you don't know how fit you are until you compete with other people that are just as fit or fitter, or until you're in a situation where you have to use that fitness. In the gym, you can stop whenever you're ready. In the fight, you can't stop until either you're on the canvas or the 12th bell's gone. And maybe that's the mentality that Robert Garcia is trying to get through to him. So if, like I said, if AJ takes that in a sense of disrespect and decides to no longer stay with him, then that's part of the problem.
Yeah. And also Garcia said leading up the week leading up to the fight, he saw the mental weakness in Joshua. So as you said, there could have been some things going on in the camp where maybe Joshua wasn't receptive to everything Garcia was, putting forth in that camp and, having him doing that camp. So there could have been some resistance in that camp. There could have been some issues in that camp. Have the feeling Garcia is not going to come back. Do you think Garcia did a good job in the corner telling him he was winning? Do you think that was appropriate? Then you think by Garcia not being the lead voice in that corner, as every round someone else was talking, there was too many people, different people talking in that corner. What were your thoughts on the whole corner work from Robert Garcia in that fight? Because he's getting criticized a lot for some of the things he did.
I mean, look, with regards to that, it's hard because you don't necessarily know what the dynamic is. AJ, remember before we brought Garcia on, he kept saying, "Oh yeah, I'm training with Angel." Like, sort of, so Angel's kind of the guy at the moment. We're doing our work, so he's with Angel more than he's with Garcia. So I've got a feeling Garcia was there more as an advisory type person to Angel, to almost help to impart knowledge on him, for Angel to obviously be the lead guy moving forward, because he was the one primarily doing the majority of the talking. Now there were parts in that where he did say, "Oh yeah, look, you're winning, so you just got to stick at it and keep what you're doing now." Maybe part of that is to do with what he said was that mental fragility that he saw. And if he told him, "Look, you're getting pieced up out there, like you need to step it up," maybe AJ would have gone into a defeatist mentality at that point.
Yeah.
I don't know what the reasons could have been for him to say that, but also within that time, there were certain points where me watching it, when I watched it the first time, I had AJ up after 6 and I had him up after 9. And then Usyk swept the rest of it and I had it 115, 113 upon my first watch. So maybe they saw certain things out there and said, okay, well, AJ is walking him down, he's being more aggressive, so that's all he needs to do to step it up because he's the cash cow. He's the guy that they still want to be the face, so to speak. So maybe what he's doing in their mind was enough for him to still be winning overall. Who knows? Obviously, I'm rewatching it. Like my scorecard was way different. I was like, oh, actually, no, Usyk pretty much dominated again, but he just put up better efforts in what he did when he did manage to win. But yeah, maybe they legitimately saw certain things that were different from the first. But I said, no, you're doing better. Like you're actually, yeah, you're winning this. Now you need to stick to it. Or maybe it's just a point of if I tell him he's losing, he's going to capitulate. So I'm going to choose the lesser of two evils.
So Spencer Oliver's comment of after the fight to AJ is you were up after 9. You're in agreement with that then?
Initially, yeah, I did see it. I had him 4-5 up at that time on the first watch. But that again, part of that, I think, obviously, I was watching with what I wanted Usyk to win. Yeah, I didn't want him to win, but Usyk's my guy. So I'm not trying to see Usyk lose per se. So with that, but because I know that I like Usyk more as a boxer than I like AJ, I tend to try and then almost judge it harder for the person that I like, as opposed to because I'm like, okay, because I can't have bias in it, so I'm going to look for the reasons why I can't give you this, as opposed to giving you the round. So there were rounds in there where, because I saw AJ moving forward and putting Usyk under pressure, maybe landing 1 or 2 shots, maybe not even seeing the ones that were missing at the time, but just seeing him kind of, okay, he did. No, I feel like you may have been more active, but I feel like he was more impactful in that round. So give that round to him. So yes, I can see how someone can say, yeah, I had it level, or yeah, I think you were up at that point. But again, if I didn't have the sound of, like my undefeated team in the background, because obviously they was doing a live stream at the time, and obviously everything they was doing was, come on AJ, yeah, that's it, you've got him, take it. And so I'm like, okay, so I'm hearing that, plus I'm obviously seeing bits of success that I'm saying, okay, yeah, maybe he did get that one as opposed to this one. So the rounds that I gave to Usyk were like super clear Usyk rounds, and then the rounds I gave to AJ, like two of them obviously were very conclusive to me, and I was like, I think he just did enough in that one, so I give it to him. But obviously I'm not the judge scoring it there and then. Although I guess I had the same scorecard as one of the judges anyway, so
Yeah, I here's the thing. People love to, like, Teddy Atlas really he drives me nuts when he talks about scorecards, because he scores even rounds in fights. And here's the thing, man. Everyone loves. I'm not a scorecard critic per se, unless it's really, really outrageous, right? And even then, I respect everyone's scorecard, because when you look at everyone's scorecard, no one has 7 identical rounds that they gave. Like if you could take 10 people and they all gave one fighter 7 rounds, and each card has that 7 rounds identical to the next person. Those, like, everyone's scorecard was all over the place. So when people say the fight was close, some people had it a draw. I actually gave the 12th round to AJ. I thought it could have gone either way. Am I wrong? Was that 12th round close, or was it impossible? Because Glenn Feldman caught a lot of heat for giving him the 12th round. Was it impossible to give him the 12th round, in your opinion? What are your thoughts on the 12th round?
No. I think he landed 2 shots on Usyk, and Usyk landed about 13 on him in the 12th. I can't give him that one.
I could see the fight. Eric had the fight 7 rounds to 5. You had the fight 7 rounds to 5. D-Style Boxing had the fight. A lot of people had this fight 7 rounds to 5. I had it 8-4. But round 6, I gave that to Usyk. A lot of people gave it to Joshua. Like, I don't think it was impossible for Joshua to maybe squeak by with a draw, or even, I don't think he won, but you can make an argument it was close.
If you want to make an argument for 6 rounds, okay, potentially, because some people did have 5. But I can't make the argument at any shape or point for him getting winning 7 rounds in that fight.
No, it's impossible for him to get 7. I think it's a stretch to give him 6, but it wasn't impossible. I think Usyk won, but I think the fight was closer than the first fight. And Teddy Atlas, oh, the fight was the same. True Geordie said the same thing. Oh, it wasn't a close fight. I don't know. I think I disagree with that. I think it was a relatively competitive fight. If you at the very least, it was a competitive fight. I thought AJ did better than the first fight. And again, this is my opinion. So yeah, I mean, I thought AJ. I thought the fight was close. I thought it was if AJ won, two of the like one of the last three rounds on another judge's scorecard, it would have been a draw. You know what I mean? So it is
Ultimately,
what it
when I rescored it, just fun fact, I actually rescored it 118, 111. So I had one even round in there, which was the fifth. I gave the third to Usyk, but it could have been a swing. And the only ones I clearly gave to AJ was the second and the ninth, from after rewatching it the second time. So my scorecard was a lot closer to the first fight, but just the fight itself was more competitive. So it's like, you can have that, whereas sometimes, because sometimes I see people say, "Oh, that fight was close," and I'm like, to me, no, the fight wasn't close. It was just competitive. Like you can
rounds were
you
the
can have a
rounds were
scenario,
competitive. The
yeah,
rounds were
like you can have
competitive.
a scenario where one person actually wins every single round, but each round is a very competitive round. That doesn't mean that it's a close fight. It just means that it was competitive. And I feel like this was more competitive than the first fight. But on rewatching it, I don't feel like it was closer. It was more of the same. It was just more competitive. He tried more in the first half in terms of trying to impose himself. And then obviously he went more for broke in the second half. Whereas in the other fight, it was jousting, jousting, jousting. And then by the time that the eighth round went, the ninth round, it was like gone for the next four, sort of thing.
Do you think the eighth round was a kind of a swing round too, or do you think that AJ clearly won the eighth?
But in this one,
Yes.
no, Usyk won the eighth for me.
Okay.
AJ obviously hit him with a good shot towards the end, but Usyk had done a lot of work before
Okay.
that. That was very effective and
Yeah.
telling. And obviously, that eighth then sort of set up AJ's, I guess, impotence for the ninth. To sort of stressing that importance on sort of getting through that one. But yeah, like the momentum for that round was swinging his way, but Usyk did way too much for me to be able
Yeah.
to give AJ the eighth round.
Because a lot of people gave the eighth to Joshua. Like he got 8 and 9, and I gave Joshua 2 and 3. But once again, three was a close round. Let me see what my scorecard was. Here's my scorecard right here. I gave Joshua 2-3, and I gave. Oh, actually, no, I didn't give him. I didn't give him 8. I gave him. I apologize. I gave him 2, 3, 9, and I gave him 12. Right. So, if
So
I
my
give
first
Usyk,
time, my
yeah,
first time, I gave AJ second and the third. I gave him the fifth and sixth and the ninth. That's what I gave him on mine the first time around.
yeah, a lot of that's very similar to the boxing scene scorecard. They gave him 2, 3, 5, 6, and 9, I think, or I think they gave him 2, 3, 6, and 9. I think they had it 8-4 too. Most people had it 8-4. Some people had it 7-5, but I think Joshua made a very good account of himself. I do. I don't. I still think that version of Joshua could beat a lot of heavyweights right now. Who do you
Agree.
think wins, Joshua or Wilder, if they fought?
I've
Who would you
always
pick?
thought Joshua beats Wilder. Purely because I feel like because Joshua's more put together. He's not. Yes, Wilder's obviously got the deadly right hand, but I don't feel like Joshua will just ultimately be there for it. And with Wilder, primarily, with maybe the exception of this newfound Tyson Fury, he still hasn't been in there with a lot of punches, like really big punches, and he's been wobbled by lesser guys. So knowing that you've got someone in front of you that can also take your lights out might make you a bit more gun shy, or it can make you more reckless because now you're just trying to get rid of them before they get to you. And I've always felt that AJ can take advantage of that. AJ can definitely get caught by that right hand, no doubt. But I always feel like someone that can almost give Wilder an insight into what his opponents usually feel would do a lot to him in that sense. I've always thought AJ wins that fight, but I know there's a lot of people that think Wilder wins it.
I think Wilder would win it because he always seems to land that right hand, and because AJ very often leaves that left jab out there. He just leaves it out there, and sometimes he just pushes it and leaves it out there, and then when he brings it back, slow and low. He gets hit with a lot of right hands. He's been hit with some big right hands. Klitschko hit him with the big right hand. Povetkin hit him with the big right hand. Parker hit him with a big right hand. And I'm not so sure if Joshua could recover if Wilder lands that big right hand, because Wilder has shown the ability to land that big right hand at any point in time in the fight, even in the later rounds. So that's my only problem with Joshua, because I'm not sure if he can recover from that right hand. I do believe he would get hit with it. That's why I picked Wilder in that fight. I just think style-wise, it's a tough fight for Joshua, but definitely you can make an argument for Joshua.
No, there is that, but I feel like Wilder wouldn't be able to do what he done with someone like Luis Ortiz and just maybe throw 1 or 2 shots around and just give up the round waiting for the shot, because AJ is a similar size. He's only an inch shorter. He's got virtually the same reach as Wilder, give an inch or whatever. So it's like, that this guy's got that power as well. His sweet spot is more mid-range than anything else. So yours is on the outside. He's in mid-range. He's going to come to a point, to a spot where you're not going to be able to get full extension on that hand unless you start throwing earlier to keep him out. And Wilder's gas tank is not. It's probably worse than AJ's in terms of actual output. So he's always going to be conservative and worried about throwing those shots. And ultimately, when obviously he's in defensive mode, all he does is he steps back and he keeps their hands up high. AJ, if he throws out a ramrod jab or throws out a straight from it and keeps Wilder just backed up, he's not going to be in that position to be front foot heavy to land the shot. So yeah, obviously there's always a possibility, but I just feel like there's certain people, anyone that's aggressive towards him, that makes him have to either work or makes him have to be defensive, will always have a good chance of keeping him holstered, so to speak, not letting him get forward.
Who do you think would win, Fury or Usyk? Who are you favoring in that fight? And do you think that fight's going to happen?
Will it happen? Potentially, but only if Fury gets comparatively what AJ got against Usyk, which is from the reports I'm hearing is about 119 million. I'm not sure if that's pounds or dollars, but that's sponsorship plus obviously the Saudi money. Fury doesn't have sponsorships to that level, so he's going to be expecting the money to be up there. And I don't think he would go in the ring with Usyk for less money than what AJ makes, because he has a sort of inferiority complex to AJ in terms of certain things. Even whether being naturally better, he wants to be AJ. He wants to have what AJ has. So that's where
adulation. He wants the adulation from the
and he wants the money that, because he's not earned the money that AJ earns per fight. Like, or AJ's highest purse and his highest purse is they're that. He wants to be that man. So if he doesn't get that, I don't think he will. Now, in terms of who wins, I've openly stated on this one, I'm not normally a biased person, but I will be 100% biased, and I'm going Usyk 100%. I believe if he's called out Fury enough times, that he must have a game plan in mind. And one thing we know about Fury, he doesn't like small nimble guys. That's his worst style to deal with. Even though he looks good against bigger, more cumbersome, clunky people, he looks very uncoordinated when he's in there with someone that's smaller, slightly fleeter footed. Everyone talks about the Steve Cunningham thing. That's one example, but the first John McDermott fight was someone that was just sort of smaller, crowding him. Didn't like it on the first try. The first Chisora fight, even though he won that fight, gave him a lot of problems. Just this smaller guy, just crowding, rushing in. He's very uncoordinated against people that are smaller than he is, because he just looks a lot better against the lumbering guys. Even Otto Wallin, smaller guy, gave him huge problems throughout the whole first half of that fight until he put his body weight into the equation. So yeah, I feel as if those are that's almost his kryptonite.
Would you be surprised if Fury won that fight?
No.
No. Yeah, it's an interesting fight. I lean towards Fury because I think he has the ability to fight on the inside, and I think Usyk has a little bit of issues with the inside fighters. Look when he fought Breedis. When you looked at he fought Garcia, and you looked at it when he fought Chisora, when they kind of crowded him and muscled him. He doesn't like to fight up close and get hit with those body shots. He reacts very poorly to those body shots. And I think AJ landed some very clean body shots on Usyk, and I think they were called low, but I didn't think they were low, but that's just my opinion. But it's an
In
interesting
the fifth round, to me, was definitely low. It started underneath the waistband. It came up to it, but it started underneath, and ultimately the refs will tell you if it's too high, you can work on the band. He didn't say that, so it must have been within the right place to me. So
well, being 6'9" and 270, most guys Tyson Fury fights are smaller than him, anyways. But as you said, it's one thing being small, but also being nimble as well. Like that style of Usyk could present problems because Usyk does bring a lot of volume. But the big question is, if Fury starts getting close and starts landing body shots and starts grabbing him and leaning and holding and mucking it up a little bit, will he be able to keep up that volume? This is why this fight's very, very intriguing. Do you think that a Wilder Joshua fight would be bigger than a Fury Usyk fight, in your opinion?
yes.
I think so too. I think it'd be more. I think it would definitely be a more lucrative fight because I think it would sell more pay-per-view buys over here, and we know how expensive the pay-per-views are over here. I think from a financial standpoint, I think it would generate more revenue. It's a shame that Team Wilder that won't even entertain the thought of sitting down and talking with Matchroom. It's kind of frustrating to me. It aggravates me. I don't see how he could make any more money anywhere else. I just think it's a no-brainer of a fight. I think it'll be an entertaining fight as well. Do you know? A lot of people too are saying that Fury is starting to become more popular over there. Can Fury ever overtake AJ? I think AJ would have to probably lose again for Fury to maybe overtake him. But what are your thoughts on that? Like right now, do you still is AJ still above? Well, he has to be above Fury because he's making more money. But in terms of public perception, who are the fans behind right now more so, AJ or Fury?
Well, no, public perception is they are behind Fury because he's not number one because he hasn't lost, but also because he had the draw with Wilder. It's almost like he was hard done by. So you've got that pocket of people that's okay. He's gone through his adverse moment and he's come out the other end. Plus the whole the mental health stuff, which was a convenient rebrand for the US, which sort of trickled back down this way. There's a lot of things there where the public are just like, they may not necessarily like his antics that much, but they are on the tip of, well, he's the number one guy in the country. So because he's the number one guy, they're sort of behind him in that sense. AJ is going to obviously need to bounce back in that sense to get that love and trust back. But there's always going to be that but Fury's just undefeated. He's just the best. But there's only so many people that will give him you're better than these people, so you don't actually have to fight them. There's only a few people that actually give him that. Whereas even some of his other argument fans are like, well, if you don't fight Usyk, then people are going to say you're afraid of him because you decided to stay retired. Or even though we all believe you're better than AJ, we still want to see you beat him. Like, we still want to see you do that. So if you don't do that, that's always going to be another blemish on you. You only beat Wilder. Like,
so do you think because Josh was with the Zone, do you think he'd have problems getting fights with guys like Joe Joyce, Dubois, even a rematch with Joseph Parker, if that would be the case? Because those guys, I think, are I think Joyce is on BT, or does Joyce have a long-term deal with BT, or can he go anywhere? Because I think
he re-signed. He re-signed to Queensbury last year. I think it's like another 4 or 5 fight deal, or a couple, or a multi-year deal. It's one or the other. He done that. Dubois signed I think a 6-year deal 2 years ago, so they're locked in. So AJ, the only way he's gonna get fights with them, he's not gonna be able to get them to the zone. They're not. I don't think they're gonna do the joint broadcast thing because it just won't generate enough money to do that. So the only way he's gonna fight any of those is if they've got a belt and he's in a mandatory spot. That's the only way I can see it happening. Because
Yeah,
they're not, because Frank's not going to let them go to the zone, and Joshua's now exclusively on the zone. Even though the zone always seem to be more willing to let people go the other way, I doubt they're going to do that for AJ because again, the money, man.
yeah. Because if there was a Joshua Fury fight, or if there was a Joshua Wilder fight, you could say, okay, the UK pay per view portion will be on the zone, and the American pay per view portion could be, with Fury, it could be on ESPN. With Wilder, it could be on Fox pay per view. So you could work something out that way. So I think there's still makeable fights as long as the zone gets their gets their portion of the deal squared away as So I mean, I think that's about it, Base. I mean, you pretty much covered it all. I think you answered the questions pretty accurately. I think you were unbiased in your assessment of this. So as it stands right now, do you think Joshua has lost popularity? Do you think he's gained popularity, or do you think he's just pretty much maintained what he was before this Usyk fight? And do you think that the future is bright for Joshua? Do you think that is if he gets these other fights like do you think the Wallen fight would be a good fight for him, or you think that's a dangerous fight for him? You think that's a fight that he could possibly lose? Like, in other words, do you think that Joshua is still viable, number one, and do you think that he's got a bright future?
100% he's still viable. In terms of his popularity, I think it's probably the same as it was before because it's just another loss to the same guy. So whoever didn't think he was that good before is still going to think the same thing. Even though he obviously had the mad meltdown in the ring, that's cost him some of his perception. But then the post-fight press conference, I feel like, has brought some people back to him. The open apology on social media, so almost like now people have kind of put the meltdown to the side because there's genuine remorse there. And, with the whole mental health thing and the advocacy for that, you can't then chastise someone who's just been punched in the head for 12 rounds and has had all this pressure on them for all these amount of years. So I feel like that's taking place. With regards to Wallin, I was one of the first people to say that should be his next fight. I've said initially I want to see him fight Zhang. I want to see him fight Zhile Zhang, go to China, fight him next.
That's
but
what
I was like, no, fight Wallin first. And then fight Zhang afterwards. Let Zhang get a win as well, so you can have the two of them on wins. Go to China, just start making some global money. To be honest, I even want him to fight Wallin in America. I don't want him to fight him over here because with the UK public, like they need to. I feel like they kind of need to see. No, this guy is the infrastructure over here. So let's see what happens when he's out and how much more money is still in the game for this time period. So I put a tweet out and I said I want him to fight Wallin in the US, then Zhang in China, then do a Tony Yoka fight on the zone in the US as well. Just bill it as a gold medalist versus gold medalist. Follow that up with a fight with F.A. Ajagba. Go to Nigeria, just have that fight over there. Go back to Deontay Wilder in the US, and then come back to the UK with a big Dillian White fight after you haven't been here for a while.
So you think if he fights Wilder, he should fight Wilder in the US and maybe not in Saudi? Don't you think though, like a lot of these fights will probably still go back to Saudi because they kind of had some good success over there with the AJ fights?
I mean, maybe they could do, but I'm just thinking like the global. I mean, the Wilder thing, to me, the most money for that fight, it needs to be in either America or the UK, because I would say more America, because the UK fans will travel over there and you can just make a much bigger thing of it over there than necessarily if it was over here, in my opinion. And obviously the money generated, I feel like you could work. Yes, it could be in Saudi, but it's going to lose a lot of what we want. Like a lot of us viscerally want to be there. and it's just a lot easier to, I guess, deal with America, provided obviously they stop the COVID mandates and the, you know, and the immunizations and having the jabs. Then yeah, we would definitely travel. But ultimately, I just feel like he needs to just get away from the UK for a bit. Like he can have the rest of his career a bit more on the road, so he doesn't get the same barrage of pressure. Because when he goes to other places, he doesn't get the same comments and criticism constantly. So if you fight over there, you're not going to have as much to deal with. You go to Nigeria, it's going to be the same thing. Back to Saudi or, you know, Qatar or Dubai, just get some global money. Go to China. I still think that Zhang fight, he'll make shed loads of money in China. That will probably be his biggest payday to date. So
you'd like to see him go to China. You'd like to see him go to US. You'd like to see him kind of increase his profile globally, not just in Saudi and not just in the UK.
Might as well just go everywhere, and you're going to get the most money in those territories, and you're going to increase the zone subscriber bases in those territories, plus here and America anyway. To me, that makes the most sense.
So is Usyk your favorite heavyweight right now in the heavyweight division? He's your favorite guy.
Yeah,
right. I like Fury. I think Fury's the man. But I'd like to see that fight, man. All right, Base. Thanks for stopping by, man. This was a great video, man. I appreciate your insight, man. I learned a lot from this video, and I hope everyone else did too in the chat. So I'll obviously we'll continue to do stuff in the future, and we'll continue to have you on the roundtable. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much, man, for taking time out, brother.
Man, thanks for having me. Anytime you need me, give me a shout. You got the number.
Okay, brother. Peace out, everyone.